Okay, that works. Cool. So my name is Brendan. I'm another one of the students from the University of Texas. I also worked on that gerrymandering map, but I'm going to talk about something completely different. In my research, I generally study animal movement, and if any of you have ever dealt with time series data, there's a fair amount of tools for it, but some of them are very code intensive and very cumbersome in some ways. So I've been slowly kind of developing my own tools for pretty much my own benefit, with the idea of eventually like sharing them with the world. And so the tool I've created right now, it's generally created in Python. It does some animal movement and then a little bit of visualization, which is some stuff I've just added to it, which is what I wanted to share with you guys. So why do we study animals? First of all, they're really friggin' cool. Like this bird, I mean, that's the coolest bird ever, right? But really, more importantly, we can look at things like predation, mutualism, communalism, sort of, how animals are interacting with each other, and then and how that affects ecosystem structure. That's a really important part of the research I do. I look a lot at how movements impact the context of the ecology of the system. And so how do we study that movement? Of course, we use location data. I think this is a place where people really understand GPS data. But it used to be that with animals, you would actually use capture and recapture data. So someone would actually physically go out, capture an animal, and then kind of record that point. And that would then be used to measure something like its home range, which is basically defined as where it spends the majority of its time. Of course, now there's GPS and Argos technologies. This map here is one by, I always forget how to say her name, Somani Dodge up at the University of Minnesota. And the dots just really represent the movement of the animal. And so I look at a lot of interaction. And the question is then, like what kind of questions can we ask? In particular, what is an interaction, right? So is that this lion here, this guy here, and this hyena, are they interacting because they see each other? Or, there's a time difference between that, how far away they are? So those sort of questions. But now more importantly is sort of dealing with the data. This is, generally speaking, what movement data looks like when you get it. It's a big table of numbers filled with XY locations and timestamps. And those timestamps are really important because the order in which they are defined or analyzed is really important, right? So there's a bunch of tools that help work with that. Most people that do movement analysis, at least that I know, work in R. And R is a great package. I prefer the speed of Python, and I prefer kind of the data management abilities of it. I think there's like more that can be done with it. So I sort of started making my own package based off some of the R ones. First of all, just to see if I could do it and to understand the packages better, but then also I think to make studying movement a little easier. And what happens is, you can download a CSV file from some websites, which I'll talk about, and basically in like 2 seconds you upload it and it creates this pandas data frame, which if you've used Python, you're probably familiar with panda data frames. Are basically kind of like a column structure. And what this does is then organize all the data in time into the right order. It has an ID. The ID in this case is the animal. So if you had a hyena, this would be hyena 1607. Sometimes you might see them named Tim or Steve or Jimmy. And then it also computes a bunch of other kind of common movement statistics, like distance between each point or the relative angle. And relative angle is very important for measuring things with interaction, like avoidance or coming together because they want to get to know each other a little better. And I've also set it up so you could select one animal at a time. So now this is a repository called Movebank.org, and it has a lot of movement data. Most of it's open source. It's easy to get, you can download it, but it kind of comes in those messy spreadsheets like I showed you. So something I decided to do was using this movement ID, which is highlighted in red here, I wanted to be able to quickly use their API to pull all their data and organize it with basically the click of one button, which I've managed to do. Okay, cool. And so I started creating this interface, and at the moment it's still kind of rudimentary, and I've done it in Python's tkinter, which is kind of a very basic GUI creation tool. I eventually will probably move it to some other like prettier tool where I can use ribbons and make it look a little fancier. But at the moment, this is kind of how I had it set up. And so it also uses leaflet. So what happens is, you see where that number is there here. Sorry, I'm not used to microphones. I like to wander usually. And you type that number from that ID, and in about a second, it does all those calculations and then creates this map. And so each one of those lines is a different animal from a different data set. And then you can then choose things like if you want to estimate its home range or show that data frame in there. And I'm going to add a bunch more tools to this as time goes on. And this is just a closer up. As you zoom in, you can actually then select various points. Because one of the problems with movement data is it's kind of hard to visualize. And this is a really quick way to say, hey, what's going on at this particular point? I don't have it all set up just yet to show everything, but it's kind of at this point still going forward. And this actually uses leaflet as well. I actually use the same base map that we use for the gerrymandering because it actually looked kind of nice. And the colors are actually from Dr. Brewer's color. It's like that 12 divergent colors or something, but there's a lot yet to be done with that kind of stuff. So for now, that's where I'm at. And my name is Brendan, and I can be found at The Cruel Beans on Twitter.
Great. We have plenty of time for questions.